I chose DS actually related to the size of my school. I was really scared coming in as a freshman of getting lost in big lecture courses. And so I wanted to make sure that I was in a really intense program of study that I was interested in, where I would get a lot of interaction with professors and hopefully meet a like-minded group of students who I could become friends with.
What I found really attractive about DS, and still find attractive looking back, is that while you are locked into like 3 classes you're going to be taking, the breadth of things covered is really astounding. You get exposed to more content, more ideas, while still being like a rigorous kind of engagement with them than any other courses, set of courses that I've taken at Yale.
And that it goes through so much coursework in those areas and so many books that you would have to, net together tens of other classes to reach, that you can really decide what it is you want. So
I don't think I would have explored philosophy at all, or not in very much depth, if I hadn't taken DS. And now I really love it and really want to, I don't know if I want to be a major, but I do want to pursue it. And in that way, I think DS opens so many doors for you into classes that you can take later on here, that it kind of provides a guide for the rest of your time about what you want to do at Yale.
David Casson gave a lecture on King Lear and then Paradise Lost. I think it was back-to-back weeks. And now I'm an English major. One of my majors is English, and especially like early modern literature.
What DS provided for me was a foundation such that everything else that I have ever studied since I took the program, because you're doing an enormous flyover of the entire history of ideas in the Western tradition, that nothing that I have ever studied since then, in any domain, failed to resonate with something that I had studied in directed studies, and that DS allowed me to form the connections between ideas and between domains of study in a way that I can't imagine anything else might have done. So
You form incredibly close relationships with your professors and with your fellow students. And I know just as a quality of life thing, that's been really wonderful for me and for a lot of my friends. Most of my best friends are in DS. And we used to all go to lunch right after class and continue the discussion, and Master Bresel would join us. And that happens in different ways with a lot of your sections, in a way that I think, some of my friends who aren't in DS don't experience, like continuing the class in a really formal way with your professors there outside of the class environment.
However, I also left with an amazingly improved writing, which I had come in, feeling really good about my writing skills coming out of high school, was kind of taken down a notch, and then brought back up slowly over the course of the year as I learned how to write a really good analytical piece. The connections that you and your class make among the works as you go throughout the year is kind of the most magical part of DS, that you all have this connection to this same body of work and can speak to the same illusions that others can, and can follow this really amazing intellectual tradition.
Also, you learn to think, I think, in a really, really good way. You learn how to think critically. You learn how to have interesting discussions with a lot of different people. I can remember coming back from school, winter break, my freshman year, and my parents saying, when did you develop this ability to, or this interest and desire to have really interesting, meaningful conversations about a lot of different things?
And I think it's the connections that are so incredible. The ability to have internalized and have at ready access the thoughts of all of these great writers, and kind of have a sense of how they fit together and cohere.
I think that's one of the cool things about DS, is that you're taking kind of this intellectual journey with a lot of different people. And yeah, people do have different backgrounds. Some people have read a lot of philosophy in their free time in ninth grade or whatever. But people come from a lot of different backgrounds. That's one of the interesting things So.
And saying like the environment that the professors foster and that kind of springs up naturally as you go through these really tough works means that it's like a huge asset to have in the classroom. And,
They're a resource.
Exactly.
They're a resource.
Exactly. And I think they see themselves that way.
Everyone has different strengths and backgrounds that inform these works, and some people are going to be experts in their classes, but some people are going to have other strengths that will be really helpful and informative. And I felt like even though I hadn't read a ton of books, I felt like I had a really good humanities preparation. But it was also wonderful having people in the class who didn't and were coming at this from a front perspective.
Yeah, I mean the great thing about DS is you get to be taught by some of the smartest people who have ever existed through all time. All the writers that were reading were very much living in the real world, trying to solve real world problems, understand how people work, and react to that. Their kind of analysis and understanding is just as relevant today as it was 100, 200, 1,000 years ago. Humans haven't changed that much. So to be able to leave with a really solid understanding of what kind of some of the greatest luminaries of human thought have thought about humans, thought about how we deal with problems and how to respond to them, that I think is an incredible preparation for trying to then bring what you're passionate about out into the real world.
You also just kind of learn about how people have thought, how people have felt throughout the last, 2,000-3,000 years. And I think that's valuable if you're going to be in the real world, interacting with people on a daily basis. You need to know there's a lot of similarity between how people thought 500 years ago and now. Maybe the content itself is different, but it's still people in a lot of that translates.
I like to think it's because DS expands your life and expands your intellectual horizons. I think there's also some very instrumental aspect to it. For one thing, in the competitive majors here, those majors where you have to compete for entry, like global affairs, ethics, politics, and economics, and some of the other quotes, real world attack points, DS students do exceptionally well in the competition for those majors. DS students, if we had an array of DS alumni here, you would find span every profession, were exceptionally competitive in their applications to graduate and professional schools of all kinds, and take up leadership roles in a broad range of activities.
If you're able to do varsity sport, 2 varsity sports, and do DS and have friends like I managed to do, it's not a crushing workload. And the great thing about it, I think, is that it's rewarding work. So there's a lot of reading to do. There are a lot of essays to write, but you see the value in it. So you're motivated to get it done.
I would just add that structure is really nice as a freshman. Everyone that you talk to who's not DS says, "Oh, that's ridiculous. You're writing a paper. It's due just about every Friday. It's an incredible amount of work." But a lot of them are writing the same number of papers, just kind of concentrated in one area. And the structure is super nice as a freshman.
Yeah, because it sort of eliminates procrastination as an option, right?
I think it provides you with a framework for thinking about what you want to study in the future, and a really early, it can provide you with a sense of kind of certainty about the classes that you're going to be taking next.
And I finished DS, and I was actually a little terrified because I loved each of the disciplines we had studied so much. I wasn't able to say, oh, the history was great, but philosophy wasn't for me. I was like, history's great, and philosophy's great, and I love literature. And really, it was wonderful because it really developed my appreciation for all of these things and the interconnectedness of them so much. I have friends who are English majors who don't think they can do philosophy or can read a philosophical text because it's just something they haven't done. But they can, they're very smart, and if they had had this kind of introduction to it, this whole world would be opened up to them that they now feel is kind of out of their reach. And I feel very blessed that now I feel very comfortable approaching pretty much any type of like scholarship and thinking that I can take a good crack at it. Mm-hmm. And that's it's a liberating, it's a great sense of self-sufficiency.
So you can really take the information that you learn in DS and apply it to just about every course you'll take in the future.
And it's the student who recognizes that you actually don't have to sprint through a STEM curriculum here. And that DS maybe provides you a way to do, to front-end load your other experience of VO in a way that will be richly rewarding in just the ways that people have said here. That is, it informs the rest of your choices. You get a concentrated exposure to a lot of big picture ideas. You know your way around the intellectual tradition, and therefore all of your other choices that are outside of the sciences are extremely well informed.
It might sound counterintuitive, but the education you're getting from DS and the STEM education are not mutually exclusive, and in fact they're intensely interrelated. I know this isn't from personal experience, but there's a burgeoning movement in medical training, especially for people who are undergrads to get their pre-med requirements done, but also to get a degree in the humanities. Because you don't want to be a doctor who doesn't understand the human condition, understand how to interact with people from kind of that long tradition. So they're not mutually exclusive at all. And in fact, I would probably argue